Before the online lynching starts, I don't hate Joker, and I'm not saying it is rubbish or anything, just that it isn't as great as it could be. For me, with a few changes, I think this could have been a modern classic. The look of Gotham and Joaquin Phoenix's acting are phenomenal. He's absolutely believable, and you feel the people's discomfort within the movie of being near Arthur. In the end, though, it ultimately failed for me because I have problems with some of the decisions the director took in telling the narrative, and they mainly have to do with the language of film. So let's first take a look at what I think the problems were, and then how I would fix those and turn this into that modern classic it deserved to be. The story as told is a fairly straightforward series of chain reaction events that chart the descent and eventual rise and rebirth of the mentally ill man, who has spent his entire life having his life controlled and destroyed by his mental afflictions. Through this series of events, he is reborn as a man who accepts himself for who he is, and is no longer controlled by those mental afflictions. The problem I have with the above is the fact the series of events are largely tropes of psychopaths in all movies. He lives with his mom, check. He's creepy, check. He's a loser who everyone treats like shit, check. In fact, that's the very opening scene of the movie. He loses his job, check. He is eventually pushed into being a full-blown psychopath via some form of betrayal. Check and check. This is essentially the basic plot of the first 2/3 of the Joker. But what really destroyed any subtlety and nuance for me is the what was real and what wasn't real aspect of it that many people after seeing the movie said existed. Here is what actually stops this movie being a classic, as I completely disagree with this interpretation. The film makes it entirely obvious what is and isn't real through the language of film. Now, the final scene could be interpreted as the joke that he is laughing at is in fact what we have just seen, that none of it was real and that all of it was a delusion within the Joker's own mind. That would be in keeping with the canonical line of the Joker's origins, that it is and always will be multiple choice, that everything we just watched was a metafictional reference to the Joker's canon, that what we just witnessed was in fact possibly the Joker's own idealized version of his own origin story. The problem I have with that interpretation are the choices that the director has made in showing us Arthur's delusions throughout the film. Every delusion until this is explained and clearly shown to be a delusion. So as a viewer, I am being programmed throughout what is and isn't real within this movie's narrative, which brings me to Fight Club. The delusions within that movie are never obvious at first. On subsequent viewings, you see the layers of storytelling and how clues are woven into the movie, that what you are seeing may not be real. Maybe far more intelligent than people than me saw them the first time. I certainly didn't. Added to the fact that the movie is so literal in pointing out almost everything else that it does, where people are seeing an intelligently subtle ending, I'm just seeing the joke being, I'm going to kill you now, because that is about the level of the storytelling up to that point. And in fact, the very next scene is the Joker walking away from the room, leaving bloody footprints, which again clearly shows that he was just laughing at the fact he was about to murder her. So how would I fix this? Well, for starters, I would completely remove the girlfriend character, as it is absolutely obvious that she would never have anything to do with Arthur at all in any way, shape or form. The reveal that it was all a delusion is so obvious that it didn't even need explaining. It certainly didn't need the flashback showing us that it was a delusion. Secondly, make his delusions less obvious. Don't show us a delusion then instantly confirm within the film that what we just saw is in fact a delusion. Leave us wondering if what we just witnessed was a delusion or reality. Did Arthur really just gun down all of those guys, or did he just imagine the whole thing? As it stands now, the film makes it way too obvious what is and isn't real, instantly confirming all and every delusion as being such, also confirming reality. The biggest and most obvious change in this regard would be that final scene. So I would have the film end like this, with Arthur muttering the line, "You just wouldn't get it," then fade to black. The way it exists now, with Arthur then leaving the room, obviously having murdered the therapist, means that the film is once again reinforcing what is and isn't real within it. By making this one simple change, you add a layer of ambiguity to what we just witnessed. By adding a layer of ambiguity to what is and isn't a delusion, you would leave room for the audience's own interpretation of events and allow for the interpretation of the narrative we just witnessed as a delusion. which is in my opinion impossible with how the film exists now, due to the way everything is shown very literally. You'd allow for the canonical origin story of the Joker himself as a multiple choice origin. As he once said, sometimes I remember it one way, sometimes another. If I'm going to have a past, I prefer it to be multiple choice. It would also, in my opinion, raise this film from being merely good to being the modern day classic Phoenix's performance deserved.